Hello, dear students. This lecture is on sampling, which is a very important part of a research. As we all know, while conducting a researcher has to collect data from various sources. We have already discussed that thing in the class. So, coming on to sampling. So, as we all know, a researcher has to select a sample instead of going in for a complete census. On the basis of information obtained from the sample, an inference about the population is made. In this process, we need to keep in mind that the sample contains only a portion of the population but not the entire population. So, a proper sampling method should be used in order to select an appropriate sample. In order to make a good estimate of the population characteristics, selecting a reasonably good sampling method is of paramount importance. Sampling is the most widely used tool for gathering important and useful information from the population. A researcher generally takes a small portion of the population for the study, which is referred to as sample, as we all know. The process of selecting a sample from the population is called sampling. As a part of a research process, we collect information from the sample, apply the statistical tool and technique for the analysis, and make important interpretation on the basis of statistical analysis. Decisions are then taken on the basis of this interpretation. For example, there are two methods of determining degree of job satisfaction of a company employing 1,20,000 employees. The first method is to prepare a well structured questionnaire and administer it to all the employees. This method is very expensive and cumbersome. The second method is to select a representative sample from the population and make decisions on the basis of the information obtained from the sample. Therefore, we can say that census is not a practical method of gathering information in many situations because of the time, cost, and other constraints involved. In simple words, we can say that sampling is the only practical solution in certain situations. As I discussed sampling, it has various advantages. It has proved that it saves time, it is cost effective, and most importantly, sampling broadens the scope of the study of the in the light of the scarcity of the resources. It provides accurate results as compared to that of census. On the other side of the coin, it has certain disadvantages also. It is difficult in selecting a truly representative sample due to the complexity of the phenomena under study. Inadequate knowledge of the researcher in the subject leads to mistakes in the analysis, which in order to reduce this, a researcher must be well versed with the research questions and the objective of the research. Population may be too small or too heterogeneous, making it impossible to select a sample. And the last is the chances of biasness in the selection of the sample. This is one of the most important disadvantage which can be improved by the adequate. Now these are the terms which are being discussed in the class previously also. To begin with, we need to understand what population is. Population refers to the entire group of elements on which the research is based. For example, if the researcher wants to study the production process of the paper industry, then all the organizations involved in the production of paper in the paper industry would constitute the entire population. The population includes all the items under consideration, which has to be very large. Thus, population depends upon the nature of the data required and can constitute persons, families, farms, some region, etc. Coming on to elements. Elements refer to a single member of the population that possess the information sought by the researcher. For example, while conducting a survey, both engineers for example, while conducting a survey about the engineers, the entire set of engineers become the population, and every individual engineers are the elements of your entire population. Third is sampling unit, which is yet an important term which is used in sampling. Sampling unit refers to the basic unit containing the elements of the population to be sampled. It may or may not be the same as an element. For example, while conducting a survey about engineers, the researcher wants to specifically study engineers who graduated from IIT. Then, engineers are the sampling unit and IIT engineers are the elements of the study. Sampling unit must be clearly defined, identifiable, observable, and convenient. Next is sampling frame. Sampling frame refers to the collection of elements from which samples are drawn. As per the requirement of the study, the sampling frame can be the same as population or a part of the population. Sampling frame must be significantly bigger than the sample size to obtain higher level of accuracy. It must represent the entire population. For example, a list of all institutionalized elderly with Alzheimer's in ABC nursing home affiliated from XYZ government, or a list of farms, or a list of suitable area segments like villages in India. They all are the sampling frame from which we select our samples. The frame must be up to date, free from errors like omission and duplication of sampling units. A very familiar term, sample size. This is already discussed in the class, so just giving a brief introduction about the term. The sample size constitutes the number of total elements to be drawn. Sample size can vary because of three factors. Number one is size of the population, variability of the population, and required level of accuracy. As the size of the population is very big, for example, 1,20,000, we cannot say that 50 sample size is appropriate. So, in order to have accurate result, the sample size should be as large as possible. Variability of the population is yet another important factor, and if we require higher level of accuracy, again the sample size should be accurately determined. Next term is generalizing and bias. Generalizing is basically the process of making an opinion on overall view of the specific groups by investigating and analyzing some of the evidences. It enables the use of the result obtained from the study of a situation into the other similar situations. For example, if the literacy rate of Patna was 70.9 as per the census 2011, this means the literacy rate of the whole state of Bihar must be close to that number. It could be 75, it could be 69, or it could be 72. Next term is bias. This is a form of error that can affect the scientific investigation and distort the measurement process. A biased study loses the validity and reliability and authenticity also. While some study designs are more prone to bias, its presence is universal. It distorts the truth, and the researcher need to recognize bias and try to reduce it as much as he can, and should be aware that the research is having these many biases. Now the most important part of sampling is sampling design process. It has 5 steps. The first step is define the target population. The target population is the collection of objects which possesses the information required by the researcher and about which an inference is to be made. The second step is Determine the sampling frame. A researcher takes a sample from the population list, directory, map, etc., or from other resources used to represent the population. This list possesses the information about the subjects and is called sampling frame. It should be noted that sampling is carried out on the sampling frame and not on the target population. Third step is selecting the sampling technique. This is yet an important step. Selecting a sampling technique is a crucial decision for the researcher. A researcher has to decide between how to use or whether to use probability sampling or non-probability sampling, which will be discussed in the later presentation. The most important part of selecting a sampling technique is making the choice between random and non-random sampling technique. This is very important and will be discussed later. The last step for the sampling design process is execution. The execution of sampling techniques require detailed specification of target population, sampling frame, sampling technique, and the sample size. At this stage, each step in the sampling process must be effectively executed. Thank you.